Good afternoon. Welcome to the February 6th Local Government Committee hearing. I'm already plotting to take over Law and Justice. Just kidding. I'm not. All right. We're going to start with 5301, Government Services for Tribal Lands. Can we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Before you is Senate Bill 5301. By way of background, counties that fully plan under the GMA must designate urban growth areas within which urban growth must be encouraged and outside of which growth, if it is not urban in nature. UGAs must contain sufficient areas and densities to accommodate projected urban growth for the succeeding 20-year period. In general, cities are the units of local government most appropriate to provide urban governmental services. These services include things like storm and sewer systems, domestic water systems, public transit, public safety. And in general, it is not appropriate that urban governmental services be extended to or expanded in rural areas, except in those limited circumstances shown to be necessary to protect basic public health and safety and the environment, and when such services are financially supportable at rural densities and do not permit urban development. This bill provides that by December 31st, 2028, a federally recognized Indian tribe and a city located in a county touching the Columbia River with a population greater than 500,000 may agree to extend urban governmental services beyond the city and the urban growth areas to property within the federally recognized Indian tribe's jurisdiction that abuts the city's boundary. A fiscal note was not requested, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no questions, I'm just going to do this a little bit differently. We have some special guests, Chairman Bill Ayal from the Cowlitz Tribe and the Mayor of La Center, Tom Stroblin. We're just going to take them real quick first, and then we're going to move back to hearing from senators. Is the Chairman of the Cowlitz Tribe, Bill Ayal, with us by Zoom? And then Mayor Strobin, if you're here, just come on up. Do we have the chairman of Zoom? Why don't we start with the mayor then?
Yeah, sounds good.
We're doing 2 minutes. Timers, please.
All right. Good afternoon, Chair Solomon, Ranking Member Torres, and members of the Senate Local Government Committee. I'm here, for the record, I am Tom Strubin, Mayor of the City of La Center. I'm here today in support of Senate Bill 5301 and to strongly urge the committee to move this bill forward. I'd first like to thank Senator Braun for sponsoring this bill on the city's behalf. La Center is directly across the freeway from the A Casino, which is owned and operated by the Cowlitz Tribe. City Hall to the casino is just under 3 miles. In 2015, the Cowlitz Tribe identified a need for wastewater services to support the development of the A Casino and its surrounding growth. The City of La Center agreed to provide this wastewater service. To facilitate this, La Center upgraded its sewer plant and extended sewer lines to the tribe, an infrastructure investment that cost nearly $5 million, fully paid for by the tribe. However, before wastewater service could begin, Clark County sued the city, arguing that providing urban services beyond the urban growth boundary violated the Growth Management Act. As a result, the tribe was forced to construct its own wastewater treatment plant using groundwater injection. The city and the tribe entered into a latecomer agreement in August 2018 to reimburse the tribe for infrastructure costs, yet no payments have been made to date. The tribe's wastewater plant is reaching capacity, limiting future development and economic growth around the casino. The existing infrastructure from 2015 remains unused. A fully functional sewer line that's, I got a yellow light, okay, simply requires turning a valve to provide services. Senate Bill 5301 is a good governance bill that resolves a localized issue while upholding responsible growth, environmental protection, and intergovernmental collaboration. It supports growth in the right areas. The city and the tribe are aligned on utilizing existing infrastructure to ensure growth is limited to where it is intended. Stronger environmental protections, groundwater injection poses contamination risks, and then collaborative governance.
Thank you. It's not like a super strict bar. You just kinda-
I was reading that as fast as I could, actually.
Yeah,
I can breathe now, right?
You can say one more thing if you need to.
I just wanted to also let the committee know, or the Senate here, that as of today, about an hour ago, that the tribe and the city just got word that the BIA approved lands being taken into trust that was supported by the city and worked together with the tribe and the city. So we are changing the way people are thinking about tribes and cities working together.
Great. Well, thank you so much. We don't have the chairman on Zoom, so we'll suspend the hearing, but if the chairman comes back, we will hear the chairman. Senator Gaynor has a question for you, though.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thanks for your testimony. Now, how far is the urban growth boundary from the tribal lands?
It literally touches to the tribal lands.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I see we have a very busy committee chair here. Can we get a staff briefing on 5421?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Karen Epps, staff to the committee. Before you is Senate Bill 5421, allowing small business establishments in residential zones. By way of background, a county or city adopts zoning ordinances to designate land in various zones for residential, commercial, and industrial purposes, and to protect critical areas and other sensitive areas within the county or the city. Residential zones include land that is permitted for residential use and may include things like single-family residences and multifamily residences. This bill requires a city, town, or code city to permit neighborhood businesses in any zone allowing residential uses, provided that the total gross floor area of the neighborhood business does not exceed specified maximum limits, and the neighborhood business does not have drive-through facilities. The bill provides that cities, towns, and code cities may adopt regulations governing specific aspects of neighborhood businesses to ensure compatibility with surrounding residential areas. These include reasonable limits related to the hours of operation, mitigation of noise levels during certain hours, the size, type, and placement of signage, timing and routing of deliveries, means of egress for vehicle traffic, and the sale and consumption of alcohol by the neighborhood business. The bill defines neighborhood business to mean any of the following: an establishment that serves a limited menu of food items that may include alcohol and has at least 500 square feet of gross floor area, not exceeding 2,000 square feet, a retail establishment primarily engaged in the sale of groceries, household goods, or locally produced products with a gross floor area not exceeding 10,000 square feet, a child care facility to serve no more than 45 children, and a business providing professional services with no more than 3 full-time equivalent employees. A fiscal note has been requested, but is not yet available, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, seeing no questions, Senator Schumach, tell us about your bill.
Thank you so much, local government, Chair Solomon, Senator Lovelett, Senator Gaynor, for having me here today. I base this bill off of my neighborhood. All of these businesses exist in my neighborhood. I don't know if they could necessarily be permitted today. I found out that our child care facility, if she wanted to remodel, she had to go through a conditional use permit. Like they're non-conforming uses, but I love my neighborhood and people love my neighborhood, and one of the reasons they like it is because it's walkable and because there's a corner store that, you know, probably shares a Wi-Fi signal with me. It's a wonderful community. And I thought of this also as a way to really encourage entrepreneurship. So there's a bunch of great bills that are doing similar work. I'm agnostic on which one you go forward with, but I think it's really important that we allow for cities to have cafes and corner stores in our neighborhoods. Early learning, we chose our preschool based on whether or not we could walk to it. If that one hadn't had a space, we would have gone to a religious preschool that I'm not a part of that religion, and that was because we could also walk to that one. That was really critical for us, is being able to be close, not having to deal with car seats every day as we go to and from school, and having something nearby the children. I also know that a lot of people, we are seeing more and more people working from home, and as long as there's a modest impact on the neighborhood, I see no reason why they can't put a shingle out and say, this is my actual business. I can have some people come visit, do business transactions, and create that kind of sense of community where you have people walking around the neighborhood, where you have people going to appointments and being able to do things nearby in this community-centric fashion. So I'm really excited about all the different ideas that are being considered in this chamber and in the other chamber on making our neighborhoods more vibrant and creating opportunities that lower the barriers for small entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Senator Gaynor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Senator Schumake. Your bill says they must allow, so it is a requirement. They would, is that a pretty tightly held feeling of yours, as opposed to they may allow?
I mean,
Because I believe right now the way zoning is, they're pretty much not allowed in residential areas typically. So.
Typically, and cities can already change it. They can already allow things on their own. So if you want to change it to a may, then there's not really a point of the bill. I will say that my mayor acts specifically for childcare in this way. She's like, can you make it so childcare, can you do what you did with fourplexes? Can you do that for childcare? Because we are in a childcare crisis, and that was something that she wanted to talk about. I think I was like, well, Mayor, you can do that on your own. But I think it's easier sometimes for cities when we do it at the state level to be able to go forward with that. And I think that's what they were asking for.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to follow. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, just real quick, we have the Chairman Ayal from the Cowlitz tribe with us, so we're going to switch back to 5301, and please go ahead.
Oh, not Chairman Ayal. This is the chairman's testimony. Or is this the other person's testimony?
There we go.
Yeah. Who is this, James? Oh, you don't know. Oh, there he is.
Chairman, welcome. Go ahead.
Oh, his audio isn't coming.
Yeah, we don't have any audio. Still no audio. Is that on our end?
It must be Chair because I can hear him online.
Okay.
Senator Bateman, we'll have to see his testimony.
Good afternoon, Chair
right.
Solomon, members of the committee. Do you hear me now?
We do.
Oh, thank you. My name is Bill Isle. I'm the chair of the Cowlitz Indian Tribe, and since time immemorial, the Cowlitz Tribe has stewarded the lands of Southwest Washington throughout the Columbia River watershed. The Cowlitz Reservation is on land put in trust for my tribe, located on a small piece of ancestral lands directly adjacent to the city of La Center. It's always been our intent to share resources and partner with the city wherever possible. And since the establishment of our reservation and our master plan for our land, that always included to connect a city sewer line and the city plant. The proposed exemption will allow us to finally share resources with the city of La Center, benefiting not only the tribal operations on our reservation, but the residents of the city as well. We appreciate the input and engagement of our stakeholders like FutureWise and agree that limiting this to our trust lands is appropriate. The Cowlitz Tribe believes strongly in the spirit of the Growth Management Act and understands its importance. This exemption, we believe, retains the integrity of GMA, restricting its use to the tribe's reservation land, and while at the same time respecting the tribe's sovereign authority. It is not our intent to lead development beyond the reservation border, hence the tight language in this bill, and we thank you for your support.
Thank you. Would you be willing to wait to see if we have any questions?
Certainly.
Seeing no questions, thank you so much for your testimony.
All right. Thank you now.
All right. So we're going to put a pause on 5301. I believe Senator Wilson was here first. Can we hear a staff report on 5552?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Rohan Bhattacharjee, committee staff. Senate Bill 5552 is an act relating to the creation of building codes for kit homes. Prime sponsor is Senator Wilson. As a way of background, the state building code establishes minimum performance standards and requirements for construction and construction materials in the state, consistent with accepted standards of engineering, fire, and life safety. Kit homes, also known as mill-cut houses, pre-cut houses, mail-order homes, or catalog homes, are a type of prefabricated housing. These homes are constructed from a series of prefabricated components which are assembled on site. Kit homes typically do not use materials such as brick, concrete, or masonry. This bill instructs the State Building Code Council to perform rulemaking on the codes applicable to kit homes by December 31st, 2025. These codes must not impose costs greater than $150 per square foot to the original home buyer. The SBCC may update the codes applicable to kit homes. Any updates cannot impose costs exceeding $150 per square foot to kit home construction adjusted by the Consumer Price Index. Kit homes are defined in the bill as any structures intended for residential use that are comprised of prefabricated walls, floors, and roofs which are assembled on site and are 800 square feet or smaller in size. A fiscal note has been requested but not yet received. This concludes my briefing. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no questions, let's go ahead. Senator Wilson.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and other members of Local Government Committee. I'm Jeff Wilson, and I represent the 19th Legislative District. Certainly this topic isn't new news. Kit homes have been around a very long time, as represented in this old Sears Homes catalog. You could purchase a home and it would show up and you simply just put it together. And this took a matter of at times minutes, hours, but it wasn't a lengthy process. We're asking in this bill to not only define kit homes, but to remind everybody we're only talking about 4 walls, a roof, and a floor. And the reason I'm keeping it simple is obvious due to the Department of Commerce's estimation of 1 million homes short of the next 20 years. If you spread that out, that's 50,000 homes roughly per year. I would say that number is higher. This allows an option, a choice, a menu to add to the menu of housing opportunities that we can provide on a local basis, to be used as an ADU or other forms in residential uses. And I'll offer up to you that there is a sense of urgency. And that's why the emergency clause is on this. We do have time to do this. We do need to do this. I know that we all know this. I've been around in my second term now. The housing crisis continues to grow. So with that in mind, housing cannot wait. And I'll take any questions on this bill.
Wait, so you put an emergency clause in the bill?
I did.
But they are going to have to enter into the rulemaking this year anyway. Why the emergency clause?
Both roads will lead to the end will justify the means. In other words, if we put an emergency clause that goes into effect, the bill does require, staff please correct me, that it still gives the Building Codes Council until the end of the year, December of this year, to get kit homes defined once and for all and set the codes related to that on 4 walls, a roof, and just a floor.
Well, it is their 3-year update this year.
Sorry?
It is their like their 3-year review this year. So I would think they would take it up this year. I'm just making sure I'm understanding the necessity.
Senator Lovelett, that's what I'm trying to do, is to make positively sure. That's why the gaps are closed. The time is now. I mean, I don't know how any other way to answer that unless staff can bring that on the process, but I believe it's more than doable. And I have had conversations, of course, with the State Building Code Council on previous sessions, as we probably all have. So with that in mind, the bill is certainly not insurmountable, completely doable.
Thank you.
I have a question. I appreciate your innovative thinking in terms of building new approaches to the housing supply problem. And so I'm excited to see this bill come forward. But staff did note that there's a clause that says that SBCC cannot use regulations to increase the cost more than a certain amount per square foot. How would you assess that? How would you determine what the cost of the regulation is driving?
Absolutely. I must give a target. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for that, by the way. A target that goes into these words, what is affordable housing? Affordable to who? So by setting those parameters, these are the bare bone parameters. As I mentioned, the 4 walls and a roof. And to keep it so simplistic, there was nothing addition intended to do an add-on. If you wanted an add-on, you wanted a marble countertop, a jacuzzi, a big screen TV, all of those would trip up into the existing codes, and that would take you out of the kit homes regulations at that point, put you under the purview of any other permits that already exist on the books. This was simply to get them up now, get them up safely, and to provide the choice. So it was really geared in on affordability, bare bones affordability. And we know, Mr. Chairman, if I may, we researched this very much on the word affordability, and the price per square foot certainly is aggressive. But to those that need such shelter and need it now, I think it was something that the legislature should, in fact, make a priority of cost.
I think we all agree that we need to get more housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Can we get a staff report on 5429? Then we're going to hear from Senator Short.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Rohan Bhattacharjee committee staff. Senate Bill 5429 is an act relating to membership in the State Building Code Council. Prime sponsor is Senator Short. The State Building Code Council is responsible for adopting and updating the State Building Code, which provides minimum construction, mechanical, fire, plumbing, and energy code requirements for buildings in the state. The SBCC consists of 15 members appointed by the governor. 6 members represent local jurisdiction, including, among others, 2 who are county elected legislative body members or elected executives, and 2 who are city elected legislative body members or mayors. The SBCC includes 1 member who is a person with a physical disability. 7 members represent the private sector or professional organizations, including, among others, 1 member representing residential and multifamily general construction, and 1 member representing manufacturers, installers, or suppliers of building materials and components. At least 6 of the 15 members must reside east of the crest of the Cascade Mountains. This bill increases the number of SBCC members to 21 from 15, and the composition is modified. The bill requires representation of local elected officials to be based on population criteria, requiring 1 elected county official to serve a population of less than 300,000 and 1 to serve a population greater than 300,000. For cities, one city elected official must serve a population of less than 50,000 and another must serve a population greater than 50,000. The requirement that 1 member be a person with a physical disability is changed to allow for the member to be an expert in accessibility. 1 member must be a utility provider serving residents and businesses. The number of members representing the private sector or professional organizations is changed from 7 to 13. The bill requires one member separately represent general construction specializing in single-family and multifamily residential building construction for a total of 2 members. One member each represents general construction specializing in green or sustainable building construction, remodeling or renovation building construction, the plumbing profession, and one representing licensed real estate agents for a total of 4 members. One member separately represents specialty construction, specializing in the installation of building materials and components, and another member represents manufacturers or suppliers of building materials and components. The requirement that 6 members reside east of the crest of the Cascade Mountains is replaced with a requirement that 10 members reside in cities with less than 50,000 residents or counties with up to 300,000 residents. A fiscal note has been requested but not yet received. This concludes my briefing. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no questions, Senator Short, tell us about this interesting bill.
I could judge that by the way y'all were looking. No. No. So, and I'll talk about that.
It's just a technical fix. There's nothing.
No, it's not a technical fix. What I will share, first of all, thank you so much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, for hearing this bill. For the record, I'm State Senator Shelley Short from the 7th Legislative District. I've actually just been recently appointed to be on the Code Council, and I'm excited to get busy on that. I think what it is really more of a rebalance. And look, we've already heard from stakeholders there's going to need to be work on this, and I'm absolutely fine with that. I think it's having that balance of private and government and the folks who really know how to do the work in the field, you know, the plumbers and just these subject matter experts. And it really hasn't been balanced that way for the last many years. And so it really is just a thoughtful approach to say, look, this is important work. I know that some on changing county to population probably needs to go back the way it was, and I'm fine with that. But it's really just trying to get the right folks in the room to say, what does this look like when we do code adoption? How do we do this? We have, you think of single family home construction and multifamily home construction, you know, oftentimes there are built different codes associated with those. So separating out those two functions, making sure we just really think thoughtfully to make sure that the codes make sense for the kind of building that the state's necessitating. Their work's really important. We know that. We want functional people, you know, just people who have that expertise. And I think this would be more of a right-sized approach to making sure that effort's balanced. It's a critical component as we look to do more housing and multifamily and actually even take buildings and turn them, you know, into multifamily. So I offer the bill to you. I really appreciate the hearing, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great. Congratulations on your appointment.
Thank you.
Going to be a value add for sure. Are there any questions? All right. Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
We're going to move on to Senator Alvarado's bill, which is 5509 concerning siting of child care centers. Can we have a staff report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Karen Epps, committee staff. By way of background, development regulations include controls placed on development or land use activities by county or city. These include things like zoning ordinances, critical areas ordinances, subdivision ordinances, that sort of thing. A county or city adopts zoning ordinances to designate land in various zones for residential, commercial, and industrial purposes, and to protect critical areas and other sensitive areas within the county or the city. This bill requires cities and towns to allow child care centers as outright permitted uses in all zones except industrial zones. The bill provides that cities may impose reasonable restrictions on the permit, and the bill requires cities to incorporate this requirement by adopting or amending through ordinance and incorporate into their development regulations no later than 1 year after their next comp plan update, or within 1 year of the bill's effective date. A fiscal note has been requested. It is not yet received, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Seeing no questions, Senator Alvarado, tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Chair Solomon, members of the committee. For the record, Emily Alvarado from the 34th Legislative District. And I don't know if folks know, but 63% of Washingtonians live in a community that's a child care desert, meaning that there are 3 times as many kids as there are certified and licensed child care slots. And that's really a challenge. I know that as a mom when I was looking for childcare, and I hear it from people in my district all the time. And quite frankly, we know that it's good for business and it's good for families when there's access to high quality and conveniently located childcare. But unfortunately, we don't plan for childcare in our planning processes like we do for parks or public schools or transportation or employment or housing. But we do know that land use policies and development regulations can significantly inhibit the ability to build more child care facilities in all communities. We know that there are some zoning and development regulations that limit where child care can be built, like prohibiting them in many different zones. And we know that many communities require a conditional use permit to build a child care facility, and that can add time and expense and uncertainty to a project. But we can change this. The American Planning Association has actually encouraged communities to consider amending their local zoning codes to remove obstacles that help us to build childcare in all zones and in locations that are appropriate and safe for children. And many communities across the state, actually, to give folks credit, have been taking steps to make it easier to site childcare, like in Lakewood and Seattle and Walla Walla. But we can do more. This is a simple bill. It says that cities must modify their zoning codes to allow for child care facilities in all zones except industrial zones. But it allows cities to set reasonable uses, limitations on those uses. And I know I've gotten some feedback from Association of Washington Cities. They might like to see a couple of more zones added to industrial that are stated as incompatible. I know there are some local government stakeholders who'd like some more definitions on some of the defined terms. And I'm happy to work with some communities who'd like to see play spaces addressed as well. So there's some more work to do, but I think that this is a really balanced bill that helps us to build more essential child care facilities in more communities, while also to have balance for local interpretation and local flexibility. And I commend this bill to you.
And Senator Alvarado, will you stand for questions?
And I'd love to take any questions that you may have.
Usually we're happy to take questions. So I have a question. This may actually be more for staff, but for those kinds of incompatible distance requirements, like say you have a pot shop, or even for people that are on registered sex offender list that might already live in a neighborhood, like what does the new siting of the child care facility supersede existing locations that already have, like generally they have like 1,000-foot setback? So I just want to make sure if there is an incompatible business or resident that we're being mindful of the interplay between those two things. And the cities, I'm sure, are thinking about that as well, but just wanted to flag that as being something that has been a limiting factor on the other side. So just want to make sure we're being mindful of that placement.
Yeah, happy to defer to staff on how that could be incorporated. Obviously, this does have the opportunity for local governments to set some conditions on the permit process for when child care facilities are permitted, but it looks more towards the entire zones. Right now in a lot of communities, child care facilities are competing against pot shops for conditional use permits. So I think this helps to put them in a better position, but obviously want to make sure that on the ground those work out well together. So.
Yeah, obviously the priority is on child care, right? But there are,
things. News agencies out
there. No, but that there's, there's obviously things that are already cited. So just making sure how that would work.
A technical expert may be better able to answer the specifics.
That's a great question, though. Thank you. Senator Gaynor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator Alvarado, for bringing this forward. I just want a clarification. If a factory or a business within an industrial area had a child care facility within it, would that preclude them from doing that?
That's a good question. It's not my intent to zone out existing uses, so we should clarify
Or
that that's
even
not the
future,
case.
I mean, because I know that there are some warehouses that actually have childcare facilities for their employees, so.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Karen Epps, staff to the committee. The bill is silent on that, so I don't believe it would impact existing zoned childcare facilities.
But going forward, it may.
Your question is, and I'm happy to look into whether if a community would want industrial zones to be compatible with childcare facilities, if they're able to do that under this bill. I don't think it precludes them from doing that, but I'm happy to look into that.
Thank you.
Great. Well, thank you for this bill. As a parent who went through this stuff, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
Right. So that's all the members that are here. Now let's go back to our first bill and open the public hearing again on 5301. We have last testifier, Bryce Yaden. We're going to do 2 minutes, maybe a little bit less. Let's do 90 seconds.
Chair, members of the committee, Bryce Yaden
With a
here.
little bit of leeway.
If I take more than 10, now I'm over my 10. Bryce Yaden here on behalf of FeatureWise, testifying in support of Senate Bill 5301. Appreciate the outreach by the College Tribe along with LaConner, and it being narrow enough on their tribal trust lands. We believe this is a good bill. It supports their longevity and the goals that they have within their tribal trust lands. Thank you.
All right, thanks. All right, that closes the hearing. Do you have any questions? Close the hearing on 5301. We're going to open the hearing on 5429. We have a number of testifiers. That's the State Building Code Council. Do 90 seconds, starting in-person panel, Alex Herr, Andrea Smiley, Patrick Hanks, and then remote on deck, Rachel Collar, Tammy Suero, and Carrie Mead. Let's just start as soon as we get up here. So, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Solomon, members of the committee. Thank you for hearing 5429. We are here in support. I'm Andrea Smiley, Building Industry Association of Washington. We believe that this is an important bill to rebalance the composition of the council, and we believe that this will help build trust that has been lost over the past few code cycles. A council that's supposed to be made up of subject matter experts has been politicized in recent history, and as a result, the cost to build new homes and new apartments has increased more than $40,000 since 2006. With a new governor focused on making homes and apartments not just safe, but also more affordable for Washington families, we believe that the work starts with the State Building Code Council and this bill. But why? Only 4 of the 20 existing members are code users, and 2 of those 4 actually build to the codes that and understand the in-the-field impacts of their decisions. Because the code has no real impact on the remaining members, we have seen impractical and costly codes adopted in the midst of an affordability crisis, and we believe this bill would help solve that problem. We know that there are some changes that will likely be suggested and would urge the committee to move this bill forward, and with the primary goal of keeping code users at the forefront of code development. Thank you.
Chair Solomon, members of the committee, my name is Patrick Hanks, and I'm the Policy and Research Manager at the Building Industry Association of Washington. I am BIW's liaison to the State Building Code Council. As such, I regularly engage with the SBCC on behalf of our 8,300 members. The bill updates the membership composition of the SBCC to better represent the diverse interests and stakeholders within our building codes. It adds more code users to the council body, including dedicated representatives of multifamily construction, green building, plumbing, and more subject matter experts that are currently missing from the membership composition. The bill also changes the residency requirement to be based on a population of cities and counties instead of east or west of the Cascade Crest. A change that I suggested after listening to discussion in SBCC meetings about how a large city like Spokane, while being on the east side of the state, would likely have a similar perspective on code issues as Tacoma or Bellevue, whereas a smaller city on either side of the state would have a different perspective and needs on code issues. The goal here is to better represent the needs of both rural and urban environments and communities. Building codes directly control the health, safety, energy efficiency, and the affordability of buildings in Washington state. By expanding the perspectives on the council, we believe it will help the SBCC to improve our building codes. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Good afternoon, Chair Solomon, Ranking Member Torres. For the record, my name is Alex Herr, testifying on behalf of the Master Builders Association of King and Snohomish Counties. Ditto, 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 and I'd like to bank my time for a future hearing. Thank you so much.
Got it, thank you. All right, next up, Rachel Kohler.
Good afternoon, Chair Solomon, Vice Chair Loveland, and members of the committee. I'm Rachel Kohler, Managing Director of Shift Zero, and testifying today in opposition of SB 5429, which would hinder the important work of the State Building Code Council. Shift Zero is an alliance of over 60 green building, energy efficiency, affordable housing, and climate action businesses and organizations working together to advance zero carbon buildings for all in Washington state. Many of our members are building industry professionals who participate in the development and implementation of state energy codes and have long-standing expertise in high-performance building codes and construction. The SBCC membership has a balance of technical expertise from a variety of sectors and disciplines, and that balance is required to provide the independent analysis and objective advice on code issues related to health and safety, energy efficiency, and affordability. SB 5429 would significantly alter that balance and jeopardize the council's integrity by adding several new seats for general construction's representatives for a total of 5 out of a proposed 21 seats on the council. Members of the construction industry provide useful expertise and perspective, but they are also the ones that are regulated by the code. We also have practical concerns with the bill's proposed population-based requirements. I was pleased to hear that it will be reconsidered. Tying seats to areas of lower population will make it more difficult to find qualified candidates with capacity to do this service. The larger firms that can afford to have staff participate are typically located in the larger urban areas. Thank you for the opportunity to voice our concerns on SB 5429.
Great, thank you so much. Tammy Suero.
Good afternoon, Chair Solomon and members of the committee. My name is Tammy Suero, and I'm testifying today on behalf of the American Institute of Architects Washington Council, a membership organization of 3,100 architects, planners, designers, and allied professionals in opposition of Senate Bill 5429. This bill would jeopardize the objective and technical balance in the State Building Code Council. The SBCC was created to provide independent analysis and objective advice to the legislature and the governor's office on state building code issues. The council relies on a balance of technical leadership and elected officials to make thoughtful and knowledge-based decisions on issues that affect the buildings our citizens live, work, and gather in. The committee's technical leadership is already a balance of design professionals and construction, which is necessary for it to be effective. The addition of 2 new seats for representatives of the general construction industry, for a total of 5 out of the proposed 21, would tilt the balance of the committee too heavily away from those design professionals who work with the codes every day. The committee today includes just 1 member from each of the architectural, structural, and mechanical design professions who are trained to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. The current statute already includes 2 general construction members representing the residential and multifamily and commercial and industrial sectors. Additionally, we question the addition of a real estate agent representative in this, as they do not enhance the technical expertise of the committee. Real estate professionals focus on market analysis and transactions and don't have the background needed to evaluate building, mechanical, fire, plumbing, and energy code requirements, the primary purpose of the code. We urge you to vote no on this bill. Thank you.
Great, thank you. If you want to hang around a little bit, see if we have questions in a few minutes, that'd be great. Carrie Mead, please go ahead.
Chair Solomon, Vice Chair Loveland, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Carrie Mead. I'm the Executive Director of Building Potential, a nonprofit trade association of the building efficiency industry. I'm here to oppose SB 5429 because it disrupts the balance of the State Building Code Council by overrepresenting the construction industry while underrepresenting those responsible for ensuring the long-term performance of our buildings. A strong building code council should reflect a balance of expertise, not just builders and developers, but also local governments, building safety professionals, and engineering experts who understand how buildings function over their full lifespan. Yet SB 5429 skews representation toward those with expertise in construction alone, in effect reducing the voice of those who focus on long-term building performance and energy efficiency. This creates a real risk that short-term construction cost savings will outweigh long-term considerations like durability, affordability, safety, and operating costs. Additionally, the bill's emphasis on population size as a basis for representation is an arbitrary measure that does not reflect the complexity of building codes or the expertise needed to get them right. A well-built home in a small town should meet the same safety, durability, and efficiency standards as one in a major city. The makeup of the council should ensure that Washington's buildings serve the needs of residents, not just when they are built, but for decades to come. I urge you to vote no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Seeing none. Next, we're going to hear from Ron Perkowitz and Ann Anderson, and then if we can be ready to promote Gavin Tenold and Bill Will, that'd be great. Go ahead, Ron Perkowitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Senators, for allowing to testify. I'm in support of the bill and representing the Building Association of Washington. I've got over 5 decades that I've spent in code development, 24 as a building official, and have been member of the past SBCC tags and appointed to the tags for the next upcoming code. One of the things in code development that always happens is the experts and expertise sit in the room, develop the codes, but the people that actually have boots on the ground and have to apply these codes don't necessarily get to have their input in there. And there's always the little quirks and issues that pop up that make these things extremely difficult to enforce or apply. So the addition of the additional folks in this bill provides to a means to allow those folks that are the boots on the ground to have a little more input in how this can be done so that it serves everyone well and that we have some very well-developed codes in the state of Washington. Be glad to answer any questions, and thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. If you want to hang on, we might have questions in a bit. Ann Anderson, please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Ann Anderson, and I'm speaking in favor of this bill. I am the owner of Green Mountain Structural Engineering, and we specialize in residential engineering. Our clients are home builders that build all over this state, as well as homeowners and home designers. I also serve on several code committees on a national basis. The state of Washington will adopt model codes that are amended by the State Building Code Council. I am involved in the development of the model codes, specifically the International Residential Code, where I serve on the IRCB Code Development Committee. The ICC, or the International Code Council, has policies in place to ensure that the model codes are developed by a wide variety of stakeholders. The committee members represent general interest, user interest, and producer interest, along with several public safety officials. The same should be for the State Building Code Council. It is very important that there are people on this committee that are actually using the codes they are developing. The variety of members outlined in this bill will do that by bringing in more people that directly work with the codes. We must have people on this council that understand the ramifications of the code changes that are being proposed. I've participated in several Building Code Council meetings this past year, and things do need to change. The State Building Code Council adopted the 2021 Washington State Energy Code, which is fraught with problems. There are many things in that code that have substantially driven up the cost of a home without providing any benefit to the homeowner. We need to do better going forward. Building codes impact housing affordability, and the choices that the State Building Code Council have made are making home ownership unattainable for many people. I urge you to vote yes for this bill, adding 6 people with real-world experience.
Can I have you wrap up real quick?
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much. Gavin Tenold. Go do what? Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair Solomon, Vice Chair Lovelet, and members of the committee. I'm Gavin Tenold, here today representing my specialty electrical contracting company, Northwest Renewables, located in Spokane, as well as my trade association, the Washington State Solar Energy Industries Association, here today, unfortunately, in full opposition of this Senate Bill 5429. And I'm a code user too. You too are code users. In fact, anyone who uses a home or building is a code user. That's why it's critical that the balance of voices across the value chain of the building industry must be maintained on this council. It's critical that the council not be overweighted in one direction so that the body does not begin serving special interests. As a member of the Energy Code's technical advisory groups for the 2021 and 2024 code cycles, I want to testify to you today that all parties elevated to council level seats in this bill are already present on the technical advisory committees working alongside me as we share each of our technical expertise and consider code change proposals. Please do not upset the delicate balance on the Code Council itself so that it may continue to represent all of Washingtonians who are the true users of the code. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tenold. We have a question for Ron Perkowitz, if he's still here.
Yes.
Ron, this is Senator Gaynor. In your time of code development, you mentioned you'd been working on things. Have you seen maybe a philosophical change, or have we continued to have a balance between the structural integrity, the energy efficiency, and the affordability components of the code?
There has not been a balance, and I'm going to speak from my own personal view as a member of the TAG and in observation in having a code consulting business. But the emphasis has gone away a lot from the structural and maybe the life safety of the building to energy conservation. It has consumed all of the code development process. We are not doing a good job of looking at protecting the people with the structural and the life safety issues and concentrating on saving energy. So there has been a very philosophical change, and I think adding these other persons to the council will help bring that back in check.
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe we have a question for Rachel Kohler, if she's still here.
Yes. Was it Rachel? Okay, I think it was. Thank you, Rachel, for your comments earlier. I just wanted to clarify or get a better understanding. You mentioned that real estate agents really shouldn't be added as one of the members on here, but we heard some comment that there was boots on the ground is very important. So those that are boots on the ground, like real estate agents, can give valuable feedback as well, and they are considered subject matter experts. Would you feel like can you kind of elaborate on what you meant, like real estate agents, are they not subject matter experts?
I believe that was Tammy Suero from AIA that had that in her testimony.
Okay. I apologize. Thank you. If Tammy's available.
I am, yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you, Tammy.
Hi, yes. Yeah, so when it comes to developing building codes, we're looking at the codes putting in place so that the health, safety, and welfare of the community is taken into account, that they are accessible, that they meet the energy code, that they're structurally sound. And real estate agents are more involved in selling of homes and transactions. I don't believe that they bring the same expertise that's necessary to create effective building codes.
All right, thank you. Next, we're going to hear in person from Bill Will, and then remote on deck is Tom Maloney, Natasha Jackson, and that would conclude the testimony.
Thank you, Chair Solomon. Vice Chair Lovelet, Ranking Member Torres, Senator Gaynor, thank you for hearing this bill this afternoon. For the record, Bill Will, Washington Solar Energy Industries Association. I am here in opposition to Senate Bill 5429. This legislation is the latest cynical effort to politicize the important work of the State Building Code Council. Since its creation, the Council has been tasked with providing objective, scientific, and standards-based advice to legislators and executive branch agencies on code issues, as well as to develop the codes used in the Washington State construction industry. The sharing of the technical expertise of all members of the building process, from the trades, design professionals, and the general public, has always been the Council's primary focus. Senate Bill 5429 would skew the membership of the Code Council and the focus of the Council towards a single industry, builders, and their agenda, and threaten the long-time independent and apolitical nature of the Council. The proposed expansion of the size of the council and the geographic restrictions detailed in the bill are also problematic. Membership on the council and its technical advisory groups requires significant time commitment. It's often difficult to fill council slots now, and expansion in the size of the council would exacerbate that problem. In conclusion, let's allow the State Building Code Council to continue its core mission, sharing the most current technical expertise that allows the construction trades, all of the construction trades, to build safe, cost-efficient, and comfortable buildings for all of the public. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer questions.
Seeing none, I'm just going to do a check. We lost a couple people in Zoom. Do we have Joel Burnson or Mike and Lori Nyercombe in the Zoom chat? And I do note that Tim Woodard is here. He signed up last, so we will call him to come up last. Who is this?
Tim.
That's Tim Woodard.
I think so. Can't see that.
I can't, it looks like we have a fire chief here. Is that Tom Maloney?
There we go.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
All right, go ahead.
Mr. Chair and members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Tom Maloney. I am the Assistant Fire Chief and Fire Marshal for the Marysville Fire District, but I'm also speaking today on behalf of the Washington State Fire Marshals Association, as I am the president. We are in opposition of this bill and altering the makeup. And our main reason for the opposition is that the TAG, or the technical advisory groups, allow for these additional people and interest groups to be part of the code making process. And we would greatly ask that you consider not changing it and making it a full requirement that these special interest groups and other members that want to be added be appointed to tags and apply to be on that tag. And we would also ask for consideration of increasing the staffing for the State Building Codes Council as well, just because of the workload, and try to get moving forward as we can create livable and sustainable communities for all our Washingtonians throughout the state. And that's all I have to say. If there's any questions I can answer, I'd be more than happy to do so.
Thank you so much. Seeing no questions, we're going to move on to Natasha Jackson. Go ahead, Natasha.
Chair Solomon, members of the committee, for the record, my name is Natasha Jackson. I am the Director of State Affairs for the Northwest Gas Association. The NWGA is a binational trade organization of the Pacific Northwest natural gas industry. But more than that, we represent an extremely skilled and a highly intelligent utility workforce that has expertise in energy planning, energy efficiency, operations, engineering, and other technical expertise. We're happy to testify in support of Senate Bill 5429, good bipartisan legislation that will bring a utility voice to the Washington State Building Code Council. To put it simply, you wouldn't ask an accountant to perform surgery. Likewise, making energy code decisions without input from utility experts can lead to questionable outcomes. By adding utility voice to the council, this bill will bring more diverse voices to the table and prevent poor decision-making from lack of technical expertise. Thank you for the opportunity to testify, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you. Do we have Tom Woodard from Washington Association of Business Officials?
Thank you. So my name is Tim Woodard, testifying today on behalf of the Washington Association of Building Officials, and I just want to thank Chair Solomon and members of the committee for allowing me to testify today. The Washington Association of Building Officials is a nonprofit professional association of state, county, and city town officials in the state of Washington, engaged in the development, enforcement, and administration of building codes and ordinances. Our members include building officials, inspectors, plan reviewers, architects, engineers, and others interested in providing safe buildings for our communities. Today I come to testify not in opposition or support, but rather if we want to add additional members to the council, the balance can't be swayed too far one direction, as you've previously heard. To that vein, we would like to propose possibilities to work with the sponsor to add additional members in other aspects, like additional fire code officials and additional building officials. And then, you know, the amount of construction expertise that's being added here is, again, heavily weighted to that private development side of things. So we'd like to see that reduced some. And we do firmly believe that there is an intention and a point in having East and West Side representation on this board, as they are so diverse in their representation there. So we would like to see something there, but we're also open to continuing to get representations from small and big jurisdictions. So thank you for your time today, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, that concludes our hearing on 5429. We're going to move on to the Kit Home Bill 5552, two remote testifiers, Tammy Suero and Tom Woodard. Please go ahead, Tammy.
All right, sorry about that. I just got brought in. Can everybody hear me?
Yep.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment today. And this time it's Senate Bill 5552. Again, my name is Tammy Suero, and I'm here on behalf of the American Institute of Architects Washington Council to express our serious concerns about this bill. First of all, the bill's current definition of kit homes lacks necessary specificity. The definition leaves considerable ambiguity regarding the materials that fall under its scope. To strengthen the bill, we recommend adding clear parameters for what constitutes the prefabricated components that the bill is addressing. Our second concern relates to the role of the State Building Code Council in implementing the legislation. The SBCC was created to advise the legislature on building code issues and to develop the building codes used in Washington state. These codes help to ensure that buildings constructed in the state are safe and healthy for occupants. The bill's requirement that codes must not impose greater than $150 square foot costs undermines the objective role of the council and could potentially be used to circumvent necessary health and safety requirements. This cost provision raises also significant additional concerns. The requirement lacks clarity about what specific costs are included in this calculation, and the bill does not establish a baseline for comparison, leaving undefined what constitutes a non-code compliant home. We welcome the opportunity to work with the sponsor to remedy these concerns. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Tim Woodard.
Thank you, Chair Solomon and the honorable members of the committee. This is Tim Woodard again. I just testified on behalf of Washington Association of Building Officials, and I'm also representing them on this bill. Washington Association of Building Officials, nonprofit organization, mostly with building officials, plan reviewers, and other people that implement the code, and we are heavily involved in the SBCC process and making sure we have codes that we can use and enforce. First, I want to say that we're also interested in working with the sponsor. Senator Wilson has done an incredible job modifying from past bills to now task the State Building Code Council with the creation of these rules, and we think, you know, with those changes, we're on a path that we could possibly get to a comprehensive bill on this subject. You'll often hear WABO testify on various policies asking for this provision, and we're happy to see it was implemented this time. I want to point out some areas of concern, though, with Senator Wilson. The current bill, the bill includes a cap on cost of construction of $150 a square foot. We have no way to control that, and as previously kind of mentioned, we have concerns of how this is implemented. Input costs of construction vary wildly and are unpredictable. Certain codes, for example, that you would cut the costs on most likely first before you invaded life and safety elements would be things like the energy code. So we would just want further direction from this legislative body on what things they want us to reduce the costs on, if that's going to be a factor.
Great, thank you. We have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So having worked on some similar legislation around temporary shelters, one of the things that came up was the fact that if you have a kit home that is made in Washington State, there's L&I inspections about the actual components of the home that comes together, but it's a lot harder when you have something that's manufactured out of the state to be able to ensure the same requirements. So as a building inspector, you go in essentially the one time to inspect a home once it's been constructed, but I think part of the complexity of finding the right health and occupancy requirements on a home that's constructed in this way is that, say you inspect it in 10 years, is it still going to be meeting the same requirements? And then somebody's living in it for 20 or 50 years. So can you maybe speak to the role of a building inspector on the duration of a home's occupancy? Presumably it's just that first inspection. Maybe you can help us understand that piece.
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you for the question. A lot of these types of kit homes do come from manufacturers with warranties on them, and they're only warranted for a short period of time. We've seen that in the past anyway. Our role in this, as we see it now, would be to influence that SBCC committee that's created to make sure that these types of houses are not a reduction in life safety in energy code or in any other provisions within the current residential code provisions, but give a different avenue of how they show that compliance. So hopefully our outcome would be that we are able to see a structure that's going to be around just as long as any other single-family home or accessory dwelling unit that's created. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That concludes our hearing on 5552. Moving on to child care citing 5509 for in-person folks here. Can we have Bryce Yaden, Alex Galeana, and Alex Cortez come up, and then after that we'll hear from Carl Schroeder.
Chair, members of the committee, Bryce Yaden here on behalf of FutureWise, testifying in support of Senate Bill 5509. You heard Senator Alvarado talk a lot about some of the issues that we see on the ground with child care facilities being able to be cited. A lot of my board members talked a lot about the community that they've built with child care facilities in their next door neighbor's house where they were using their basement or their rec room and other things, and they really want to bring that back because they've noticed that those have gone away. So I want to stress that. The second piece I did want to mention, I think Senator Gaynor, you had a question. My understanding of the bill is this would apply to the strict areas that are zoned in a certain way. You could still have a conditional use permit for certain areas as well, because this only requires you do it in certain areas this way. It's just an allowable use in these zones. So it could still be a conditional use in industrial zone or something else if there were certain conditions met that the jurisdiction felt was necessary to cite it there. Thank you.
Bryce, I have a question. So we had a situation up in Skagit County where, we have one of the only unionized farm worker workforce up there, and one of the challenges that they were having was one of the provisions of their contract was to be able to put a child care center on site, but it's an incompatible zoning use to be kind of in the unincorporated areas. I mean, is this an avenue for a conversation where we can talk about kind of because it's obviously incredibly relevant to them to have that on-site child care? Is that, I don't think it's available via a conditional use permit though, because they're resource lands. Is that something FutureWise has looked into?
Yeah, I mean, I think we can, I think that you've brought up, we talked about it in the interim, and I know there's been other conversations about farm worker housing and support for farm workers. I think that's a great conversation to have, and we'd be willing to have it. One of my board members talked extensively about how she grew up in a little town and her parents went to farm every day, and then the different types of child care facilities she was in during that time period in Eastern Washington. And granted, this was, 40, 50 years ago, so it's slightly different now. But I know she would have a great interest in talking and working through that process.
All right. Let's go to the next panel, next testifier.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex Galeana, and I am the Executive Director of the Children's Campaign Fund Action. And we are an organization focused on building political power for children, youth, and their respective families. And thank you so much for allowing us to come in here and speak to you all today. Right now, Washington families are in a state of crisis when it comes to childcare. Approximately 63% of kids under the age of 5 live in what we call a childcare desert, which are essentially places where parents search endlessly for care that simply does not exist. And who are the families who are being hit the hardest? These are working parents, especially moms, who are being forced to leave their respective jobs because they cannot find care. Now, we are seeing this impact everywhere. Almost 40% of parents here in the state have either quit a job or been fired because they cannot find appropriate care. And this isn't just a family issue. This is also a big economic one. For example, Washington businesses have lost approximately $2.5 billion per year because their workers cannot find care. And yet our outdated zoning laws continue to make it even harder to open up new child care centers where they're needed the most. Now, we know how to fix this. For example, the city of Lakewood rewrote its zoning rules, and childcare access can now be expanded from covering just 4% of the city's area to now more than 50%. And this means that significantly more families can now expect to see childcare options become available in and around their respective neighborhoods. This bill takes a success statewide and ensures every community can build the facilities that they need. And for these reasons, we strongly urge you to support this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Alexis, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Alexis Cortez. I'm a single parent out of District 31. I'm here to voice my strong support of Senate Bill 5509. While I am a full-time student and a part-time housekeeper, I am a mother first. To be successful, I rely on accessible childcare. My area zoning has made it nearly impossible to find local childcare. I travel outside of my district to utilize available childcare. Even then, my provider, Fanta Tofa, is struggling with constant zoning issues that arise, making it difficult to expand and create more support for working and higher education-seeking families. This will put more pressure on family-seeking childcare, causing an epidemic of the desperate, Facebook sitter searches, and loss of work for families. Community is a powerful thing that makes our state so wonderful and amazing. Our providers create a community for families so that they can thrive and grow along with their children. While we rely on each other for support and strength, we further urge this committee to support in spreading community where it is needed most. I want to thank you for the honor of being able to testify today.
Thank you so much. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you. And let's hear from Carl Schrader.
Thank you, Chair Solomon, members of the committee. Carl Schrader, Association of Washington Cities. We're here in support of this bill. Our members have been talking to us over the last several years about how we can work together to improve access to child care. Some of the examples you just heard about Lakewood were some brought to us a couple years ago by former Representative Kagi. We've partnered with Enterprise and MRSC to encourage this sort of action over the last year, putting together webinars and blog posts at MRSC. So we think there's a lot of merit to this. Really appreciate the outreach from then Representative, now Senator Alvarado, over the course of many months to put this together in a way that's streamlined, that provides the authority to regulate, but provides the expected state direction. So appreciate that model. Hope you'll look at it in other places, and talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. Senator Levelett asked about folks that have to be at a distance. Do you have any thoughts on how to address that?
Yeah, thanks. That's a good question, and really something I think why it's important to have that authority to regulate that's in there. So I believe that should cover that. But we would want to ensure that so we can work with your staff and make sure that we're on the same page on that. Also, with Senator Gaynor, I believe Senator Alvarado's answer was correct, that a city could choose to allow childcare in industrial zones even without a conditional use permit if they wanted to. But this bill would not require them to, like it does in other zones. And the two zones that we've flagged for Senator Alvarado are light industrial and open space zones.
Now we have Carl Schrader on record for a mandate on local government.
I know. Don't get used to it.
Just a couple more. All right. That concludes the hearing on 5509. We're going to open the hearing on 5421. In-person panel, Mark Johnson, Katie Beeson, and Sean DeWitz. And then we're going to go to remote panel and then back to the in-person. So on remote, Ryan Windish, Selena Lyons, and Wes Mills. Go ahead, Mark Johnson.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Mark Johnson representing the Washington Retail Association, agreeing with the prime sponsor's intent with this legislation to make more livable neighborhoods. We're pleased that she recognizes retail in the legislation, which I represent. I understand there needs to be some adjustments to the bill so that's easier to implement and doesn't cause any hardships. So we commend the bill to you and hope you'll continue working with it to improve it and pass it along. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Sean DeWitz with the Washington Hospitality Association. I originally signed in other for this, but in conversations with the prime sponsor and hearing Senator Alvarado's bill that may address some other areas to streamline this bill, you can expect our support with a few amendments that passed unanimously through the House, such as languages around what is a limited menu, that is an industry term, not a legal one, and just cleaning that up so this can move forward and we can have walkable neighborhoods. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Solomon and members of the committee. For the record, Katie Beeson here on behalf of the Washington Food Industry Association, representing your local independent grocers and convenience stores. We are an incredibly supportive other today on Senate Bill 5421. We'd love to see it align a little bit more closely with the House version, which I think you heard Senator Shoemake highlight today. That could mean lowering the square foot threshold for retail spaces. In the House version, it's over 500 square feet. In this one, it's 10,000 square feet or less. And to make a neighborhood walkable, a 10,000 square foot store is kind of big. And so we just wanted to share that while we think this is really an incredible opportunity for entrepreneurs to come in residential areas and create these walkable communities, 10,000 square feet is a little large. And so we're supportive of reducing that threshold. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just for members, we did just up the commercial square footage available to even be constructed in a Lammard to 10,000 square feet, just for context of how much that is.
Great. Any further questions? Seeing none, let's go to the remote testifiers, and then the last one in person after the remote will be Carl Schrader. Ryan Windisch, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Solomon. My name is Ryan Windisch. I'm the Community and Economic Development Director for the City of Sumner, a city of 11,000 people in Pierce County, a very walkable community. I am testifying in opposition to the bill. While well-intended, I think these types of decisions should be made at the local level. And a great example in Sumner of why this decision should be made at the local level is we have two busy streets, Main Street and Valley Avenue. Both are fronted by residential single-family homes that are that way intentionally by council. And this bill would set those homes up to be converted to commercial uses. In fact, I believe that the residential uses and homes along busy streets in any city, Spokane, Leavenworth, Monroe, would be set up to be converted to commercial first and drastically change the character of those streets. And so it would also have an impact on available housing because I believe converting from residential to commercial is going to be the low bar and the easiest thing to convert. So while well-intentioned, I love the idea. I love those kind of communities that were described by Senator Shoemake, but I think this is going to have unintended impact and that these local zoning decisions should be at the local level. Thank you.
Thank you. If you want to stay on for a bit to see if I have questions, you may. Selena Lyons, please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Solomon, Ranking Member Torres, and committee members. My name is Selena Lyons, and I serve as the Community Development Director for the City of Covington. I really appreciate the intent behind this Senate bill and the desire for good planning. And I'd like to share a little bit how it may impact smaller cities like ours with the continued desire to promote walkable communities. So I've signed in as other for this. Covington's a small city. It's just under 6 square miles. We have over 106 acres designated for residential use and about 186 acres for commercial purposes, with the furthest home within our 6-mile radius being no less than 1.5 miles of a business district at a local level or a larger business core level. So allowing the businesses into the residential zone would have some unintentional consequences on weakening our commercial areas, increasing vacancies, and potentially raising lease rates. We'll be submitting other language, but I just want to share a few alternatives to consider. So we are recommending that we limit the application to a higher density residential zone, specifically those at like R18 or greater. Consider exempting smaller cities like Covington, ideally those under 15 square miles or some makeup of that, from this requirement due to our just limited spacing. And that cities with neighborhood and community level commercial zones already serving residential areas as outlined in the comprehensive plan. Another thing is to consider cities with commercial zones within a 3-mile radius of a residential zone within and across municipal boundaries should not be subject to the legislation. And lastly, the bill's effect should be delayed until cities receive guidance on how to implement. Thank you.
Thank you. Can we hear from Wes Mills? Please go ahead.
Hello. Good afternoon, Chair Solomon and members of the committee. My name is Wes Mills, testifying just for me, and I am testifying in support of 5421 for a variety of reasons, namely that people deserve and want local businesses near them, especially places to gather and for childcare and have easy access to food and groceries, but also because of my experience during the height of the pandemic. My household does not drive, so we walk and take transit everywhere, and during the peak of the health and safety restrictions, virtually every business near me was off limits because I couldn't arrive in a car. Even though I live in an area with robust transit access, all of the services around me are geared for people in cars driving on the busy roads. Corner stores and small retail and neighborhood-oriented services would have been amazing then, and especially during that tough time. The process of getting smaller, more people-scale businesses can be long and expensive in many cities in Washington, which discourages them to the point of not happening. Requiring cities to permit these kinds of activities while including reasonable rules around noise and access is a good compromise. People who don't drive need access that isn't via drive-thrus and across risky driveways. And besides, where do our next quaint local shops and restaurants come from, if not from businesses like allowed in this bill? Thank you for your time. Thank you for the ASL interpreter who is here, and I urge moving forward.
Thank you. Do we have any questions? Seeing none, let's hear from Carl Schrader. Sorry.
Well, thanks again, Chair Solomon, members of the committee. Carl Schrader with the Association of Washington Cities, here signed in other on this one, and wasn't fast enough on your joke on the last bill, but we actually supported the middle housing bill in its final form as well. So you've heard a lot of the complications, I think, in terms of some of the nuance around a proposal like this, which I think applies to a lot of the proposals we're talking about this year, where the state would sort of require certain uses broadly, and then hopefully we'll retain the ability to moderate the negative externalities. Already heard about the size. So the average 7-Eleven store is 25 to 400 or 4,000 square feet. So this is like 3 to 4 times the size of a 7-Eleven. So we agree that's too large for a neighborhood context. We would suggest either allowing cities to set those standards themselves or go to the 500 square foot threshold that's in Representative Clicker's bill that this committee heard last year. A lot of the prescriptive requirements about how to regulate these things in this proposal could actually inadvertently cause problems for existing uses that cities are already allowing. We certainly want to avoid that. I know that was a conversation in the committee last year. We suggest just removing those and allowing that regulation to fit the situation. You also heard about the implementation timelines. We're really hoping that you can sync up all of the timeline requirements of all of these bills by the end of the session so that they're not stacking up on each other and they're aligned with the GMA timelines, and we'll help you with that. And we can share a much cleaner sort of do it, and here's 3 to 6 line bill if you'd like a real clean version to consider. So I've shared that with the senator, haven't had a chance to connect with her yet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So a couple of questions. Did you know did this bill specifically speak to drive-throughs, whether they are allowed or not allowed?
I think it mandates that they be, that the businesses be allowed if they do not have a drive-through, is my recollection. Maybe I'll ask staff.
Yeah, they're only allowed if they do not have a drive-through. Okay, good, great. So Carl, maybe you can help us understand. So last year, part of the challenge with this bill was that, as has been expressed, there's nothing that's prohibiting these businesses from being in local jurisdictions. So why aren't they being built? Is it just a matter of zoning? Is it a matter of the cities don't want to dig in and make mistakes? Why isn't it being adopted more often in cities if it's already an allowable variation?
Yeah, so the feedback I've been getting is largely cities saying, we authorize this in certain areas. They call it neighborhood commercial, or, it's more common. In other cases, they may never have been asked, and they don't have that, the community hasn't asked for it yet. And then the other part of it is, just because you allow it doesn't mean somebody can make a profit and build it and run it and purchase the land and do it. I think we should be realistic with our expectations of how much of these facilities are going to be built in the average neighborhood around the state.
Senator Bateman.
Thank you. Jumping off or building on to Senator Lovelight's question, Carl, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. Do you think, because we've seen a lot of legislation in the last couple of years focus on allowing for different types of housing to be built in what are single-family neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. So ADUs, middle housing, co-living spaces. Do you think there's a relationship between density and these types of uses being allowed? I assume that there is a relationship there, but those other pieces of legislation haven't come online yet. So do you see these working well together, or a relationship with the density of housing and these spaces?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Senator. I think, I don't have particular data to this, but I think that, the more dense, the more potential customers you have, the more likely that a business could be successful in that case. So I think that would make sense. But my main experience with these is in Olympia, the Frog Pond grocery store up on Capitol, and I forget the one on North Street by the high school. And at least the one by the high school is not a particularly dense neighborhood, but it's a small convenience store. I guess I'll take the opportunity to say I am hearing feedback from some cities who are like, my citizens are going to freak out if a new Kratom store with collectible knives and malt liquor shows up right next door to the house, and they don't have any sort of capacity to have an impact on that decision. So, that's the balancing point that you all will have to wrestle with. But I do think, to your main point, the densification legislation, to the extent it starts to show fruits on the ground, should help support more of these types of businesses.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
All right, seeing no more questions. Thank you so much, Carl. That ends our public hearing on 5421. We're going to move to our last bill, 5467. I think Senator Torres is sad that we're going to start winding up on the testimony. Can we hear from Joran Clowers and then Devin Gomboski, both in person? Please come on up. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping the gun. Can we hear from staff, and then we'll hear from Senator Gaynor? Just trying to stay on time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Rohan Bhattacharjee, committee staff. Senate Bill 5467 is an act relating to the sale of surplus property by water sewer districts. Prime sponsor is Senator Gaynor. As a way of background, water sewer districts are special purpose districts that provide water supply and wastewater management services to residents and businesses within a defined geographic area. These districts operate independently from city and county governments and are governed by a board of commissioners. The powers of the board include the authority to purchase, construct, maintain, and supply water works to furnish water to residents and businesses, and to regulate service rates, water usage, sewer systems, and drainage operations within their jurisdiction. The board may sell property belonging to the district at a public or private sale if the property is no longer needed. A notice of intention is required to sell personal property which is valued at $2,500 or more. A private sale of real property is not permitted where the estimated value exceeds $5,000. Estimated value is determined by the board and based upon real estate appraiser and broker advice. This bill increases the monetary threshold for the notice of intention requirement for sale of personal property from $2,500 to $5,400 in value. The monetary threshold for permitting the private sale of real property is increased from $5,000 to $7,500. A fiscal note has been requested but is not available. This concludes my briefing. Happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead.
There's real property in this world that's valued at only $5,000. I suppose you guys will be able to answer the question as to the why on that.
Senator Gaynor, please tell us about your bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee.
Bill of the year.
That was my first question, too.
Yeah, give me a handful of dirt. There you go.
This bill really is just updating current practice when I say current practice, a practice is already in play. It's just changing some thresholds. When you have a junior taxing district or any, in this case, it's, water and sewer districts that have surplus property, whether it be real or what we consider personal property, they can surplus that, but it has an extensive process of notification and maybe going through an auction or tying in with some other entity to, share the property auction. It just is more of a process than what for small items that you should be able to do. And their request here is to raise the threshold for real property from 5,000 to 7,000. And it probably, to your point, Senator Loveland, it probably won't affect too many transactions, but it does give them the opportunity to go up to that $7,000 threshold. And then, of course, on the other property, it raises from $2,500 to $5,400, and really it's just an effort to kind of keep pace with some of the inflation that we've seen. This hasn't been changed since 1993, so what you could buy for $2,500 in 1993, you're probably not even going to buy for $5,400 in 2025. But it is an opportunity for them to be able to dispose of surplus property in a more expeditious manner. And I believe it's a good bill. We should support it.
Great. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Solomon, Ranking Member Torres, and honorable members of the committee. We're not aware of any property that's currently valued at $5,000, so we're very grateful for Senator Gaynor for bringing this bill before us. I'm Devin Gomboski here today on behalf of the Washington Association of Sewer and Water Districts in strong support of Senate Bill 5467. Currently, our Sewer 1 water districts are navigating these outdated thresholds, which take up a lot of time for us as we're trying to sell this surplus and real property. Thresholds, as Senator Gaynor mentioned, have been set many years ago, and what we're doing is we're just raising these rates by the rate of inflation since they were last set. So these adjustments are much needed, and we just want to thank Senator Gaynor for his time and consideration on bringing this bill forward, and our colleagues with the newspapers for being collaborative with us in their determination of what those threshold triggers might be.
Sorry, I'm just trying to figure out, maybe I'm missing something. In the real world, is this useful?
The surplus property threshold trigger is particularly useful. For the real property, we would like to see it higher, but the rate of inflation was what we came to agreement with on the newspapers.
Okay. Go ahead, Jordan.
Perfect. Chair Solomon, members of the committee, for the record, Jordan Clowers here on behalf of Snow King Water District Coalition. As Devin said, we're also signed in pro today on 5467. The last adjustments, 1993, we support this in order to align it with inflation, and we also agree on the real property threshold that it's, I'm not here to speak on that, but it definitely helps with the personal and other surplus property. So we hope for your support on this bill.
All right. Okay. Well, with that concludes the public hearing on 5467. We are going to be moving into executive session, but first we'll have a brief caucus.
Well, don't we need to get the bills?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Let's go ahead. Can we have staff report on the bills?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Karen Epps, committee staff. The first bill on the executive action agenda is Senate Bill 5172 concerning fire protection district civil service systems. This bill was heard on Monday, January 27th. The bill allows a district that has adopted civil service in its fire department to dissolve the civil service system if the board adopts a resolution to dissolve the system and a majority of the civil service employees employed by the district vote to dissolve the civil service within 60 calendar days of the adoption of the resolution of the board. There are no amendments on this bill.
Move on to the next bill.
So Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill 5300 is an act relating to leasing authority of the State Parks and Recreation Commission at St. Edward State Park. Prime sponsor is Senator Stanford. This bill was heard on January 30th. The bill removes the provisions which granted the commission authority to enter into a 62-year lease for property at St. Edward State Park. There is one proposed substitute sponsored by Senator Salmon, labeled S-1165.1. The proposed sub retains the language existing under current law that the lease at St. Edward State Park may only include certain areas of the property.
And does this match the House amendment?
Yes.
Thank you.
And Senator, the next bill is Senate Bill 5370, which is an act relating to lengthening port commissioner terms. Prime sponsor is Senator Harris. This bill was heard on Monday, February 3rd. This bill allows port commissioners or the voters of a port district with 4-year terms of office to submit a ballot proposition to increase the terms of commissioners from 4 to 6 years. There is one proposed substitute sponsored by Senator Torres, labeled S-1215.1. The proposed substitute clarifies that the commissioners are elected to different lengths of terms if 2 commissioners are on the ballot in the same election to ensure staggered terms. Happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, let's move on.
The last bill on the list is Senate Bill 5554 concerning historic landmark designations. That bill was also heard on Monday. This bill prohibits a city or code city from designating a property as a historic landmark if the property to be designated is less than 40 years old, or the designation would restrict the use, alteration, or demolition of the property, and written consent of the owner of the property has not been obtained. Designation made without written consent is void unless and until consent is obtained. The bill requires cities and code cities to implement these requirements no later than 1 year after the bill's effective date. The bill provides that these limitations do not apply if the property that would be designated as a historic landmark is in a historic district that has been established through a local preservation ordinance. And finally, the bill establishes that actions taken to adopt these regulations may not be challenged under SEPA. There are no amendments on that bill.
Thank you. Seeing no questions, we're going to go into executive session. We're going to go at ease for the purpose of caucus. I don't think it's going to take very long. I'm guessing maybe about 5, maximum 10 minutes. We'll be at ease. But it's not the end of the day. All right. Committee is in executive session. Can we have Senate Bill 5172 before us?
I move that the bill receive a due pass recommendation and be sent to the Rules Committee.
Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. The bill is passed, subject to signatures. Can we have Senate Bill 5300 before us? There's a proposed substitute labeled A-1165-1 offered by Senator Solomon.
I move adoption of the proposed substitute.
Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay.
I move that the proposed substitute receive a due pass recommendation and be sent to the Rules Committee.
Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay. The bill is passed, subject to signatures. Say nay, but we now have Senate Bill 5370 before us. There's a proposed substitute labeled BS-1215-1 offered by Senator Torres.
I move adoption of the proposed substitute.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, nay.
I move that the proposed substitute receive a due pass recommendation and be sent to the Rules Committee.
Is there any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. The bill is passed, subject to signatures. Senate Bill 5554 is before us.
I move that the bill receive a due pass recommendation and be sent to the Rules Committee.
Is there any discussion?
I think for the historic landmark bill, I think there is some ongoing conversation about making sure that we have the right vintage of buildings. Certainly, it makes sense to make sure that the owner is consenting to the landmarking of a property. But it sounds like there may be a couple more issues to work on as we move it to the floor. But happy to pass it out of committee today.
Sure. Awesome. Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The bill is passed, subject to signatures. That ends this meeting.